You will no longer stand between me and my destiny.
But I will.
And the Masters of the Universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. Our friends, the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together, we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
Welcome to another episode of I Have the Power, a He-Man and the Masters of the Universe podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me again is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Doing great, Adam. Happy to be with you once again, my friend.
Indeed. It's been a while since we've done one of these, you and I anyway.
Yeah.
And it's good to be back on we're recording on the day of release of Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2. The last time we recorded, we talked about the final trailer for Part 1, and we talked about issue 1 of the Prequel comic book from Dark Horse. Obviously, we've seen Part 1. Donya and I have done a recently in-depth review of Part 1, which you can find on Podbean and YouTube if you haven't listened to that already. But Chris, I never really got to ask you about your thoughts about Part 1. So give us a brief kind of telling of your thoughts of Part 1 overall.
Well, I really enjoyed it, man. I thought the animation was great. The storyline was really good. Even the music was very well done. It was an interesting conceit to kind of say, okay, what if we remove He-Man from this board? If we remove that piece, what happens next?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to see, He-Man's past or Eternia's past,
yes,
with the previous champions, and I just all in all, I really enjoyed the 5 episodes, and it made me upset that I had to wait for Part 2.
Yeah, that's the sentiment I had. I'm like, I remember when I watched it, I'm like, really? How long? When's the next one? I was like, all right, there's going to be like a post-credit thing saying coming on whatever date, and there was not one, so we had to wait. But I really like, if you watch the first part. I mean, most people can. Again, my thoughts are in detail in the previous episode that Donnie and I did. So if you want to see me go in depth, go there. But what I liked about it was that it was, for legal reasons, they took what they could from the 80s show.
Sure.
There's only so much they can take because of rights and all that jazz, that legal stuff. But let's be honest, they took the only plot thread that really hangs left undealt with, and that's really the secret about Tila's lineage, right?
Which we will get into a little bit when we discuss these comics here in a few.
Right, exactly. And so they took that, but they also took, if you remember, there was a lot of stuff story-wise that they were playing with from the DC comic books, but also the mini comics from the 80s. and the microcomics. So it was a nice blend of all things He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, I thought. And like I said, yes, He-Man was technically off the board, as you put it, but his presence and his essence kind of loomed large over the whole thing.
Oh, for sure.
And
I
let's
mean,
be honest.
it's a He-Man story, but the story that they're telling here, I thought was really compelling. Without needing to see He-Man and Skeletor battle it out in every issue or every episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And it's like I kind of liken it to, well, in either version of the Justice League you watch, Superman ain't in it a whole lot,
Right.
but his presence is imbued through both versions throughout the whole thing, and that was really the cool thing. But again, I'm the kind of guy that, yes, is He-Man my favorite character from this franchise? Of course, but to be fair, as a child, I didn't really pay much attention to the other characters. Now, as an adult and watching this, yeah, I'm more interested in, give me some more of the other characters.
For sure. I liked seeing how like Triclops was running that. I guess it's like a technology
Yeah,
cult.
evolved. Yeah.
Yeah, man, just those little additions to the storyline that flesh out the characters even more. I really appreciated those kinds of things.
Yeah, like, the king, who knew we were going to get any of that? And Dennis Haysbert was probably the perfect voice
Yeah.
for that. It's and again, what I liked about this was, yes, it's an animated series. It's picking up, some threads from the past, but everybody like, obviously I'm doing a show centered around He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Obviously, I love the '80s iteration, right, the cartoon. However, I don't think anybody can look at me with a straight face and say that the story and character development of that show, the original, is anywhere on the level of the quality of part one of what we saw here. Like, the stories are more rich, the characters
I
get more
agree.
development. So, it's like, and I know there are some people that just wanted a straight up, give me the same old with modern animation. And that's not what's presented here. I think the characters are growing and evolving. There's character growth, right? So, like, even let's take the basic ingrained into everybody's head version of Superman, the Christopher Reeve version, right? Even that version of the character got some character growth between the first and the fourth movie.
And I would expect nothing less from Kevin Smith. He's really good at the character type stuff. Most of his movies are character and dialogue based. They're not action heavy sci-fi epics. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's really good at that. And so I think he is really the perfect caretaker for this franchise, both on television and in comic form. Because he wrote the story for all these.
Yeah, and that's also, like, not to say that there wasn't a lot of action. There was plenty of it. But
sure.
Kevin Smith is not an animator. He's not an action director. So he left that to people who were experts in that arena. And I think both came together nicely. It seems like you and I are relatively on the same page with part one. And spoilers, well, not really. I'm not going to divulge anything. But I've gone ahead and watched the first 3 episodes of part 2, and oh boy, so far has it been awesome. And I can't wait till everybody sees it and gets to weigh in on it. But for the people that outright hated part 1, I've seen some of your reasonings, and I just don't understand it. But I will say, I think even you, people, which I'm not on board with, I don't agree with. Even you, I think most level-headed versions of that group, if there are any, and I'm not talking about the Yellowfish TV people or the games and geeks and gamers or any of those losers. I'm talking about level-headed, people who just happen not to like the first part for whatever reason. I think even you will find enjoyment in the second part, at least from the ones that I want. Now, it potentially could fall apart in the final 2 episodes. I personally don't think it will, but from what I've seen of the first 3, I dig them. So that's where I'm at. But before we can go forward, and before Chris sees part 2, before I finish part 2, we have to kind of go back because we are still dealing with the prequel comics. So we have to finish issues 2 through 4. So that's what we're going to deal with now. So, Chris, give us a little bit of a info on where we left off and what's been going on.
Well, it's been so long since we talked, Adam, that I had to go back and read issue 1 again.
Me too. Yeah.
Before starting issue number 2. So I'm glad I did that, because had I just picked up at the beginning of this, I think I would have been a little behind.
Yeah.
But basically, we left off with King Randor having been attacked by a creature called the Orlax. The creature disappears when Prince Adam or He-Man draws his sword, and He-Man. Well, we don't need to go all the way through issue 1. I'm sorry, I'm trying to recap the whole thing. But basically, that's where we left off was He-Man had brought back a piece of the Orlax, that, like a tentacle that had regrown into a full Orlax that the sorceress was keeping caged up, and they were going to try to find a way to communicate with the Orlax to get it to release its psychic grip on King Randor.
Right.
Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right. Sounds like a good quick summation. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's where we're picking up here, but we see Skeletor talking to all of his minions, and I kind of thought of this episode as sort of a Skeletor Begins, because the vast majority of this issue is Skeletor talking to Evil-Lyn and recounting his early days as a slave, and as a slave liberator, and as a family man before he joined up with Hordak and left his planet to learn the ways of the dark magic in the universe.
I really like this issue, and the the origin that we're used to in more recent comics is that he's He-Man's uncle, right? In the DC lore of recent years, that's what it's been, right? That's what it was in the 2000 era animated series, I believe, if I remember correctly. I don't have a vivid memory of his origin in the micro and mini comics, but I think this is closer in line with that era of Masters of the Universe lore. So it was cool to get a little bit deeper into that. And I got to be honest with you, there was, for a brief, half of the issue, I kind of started feeling sorry for Skeletor.
They do a great job of showing his tortured past and making you think like, wow, this guy's been through some things.
Yeah. I mean, spoilers, he's suffering the loss of his daughter and his wife. That kind of a loss, there are certain things that would drive a person to the levels of insanity and anger and things of that nature that Skeletor we know the space that he occupies. I think that event of losing your wife and your child would be a catalyst for that. So you could totally see why he goes down the path that he does, and the whole reasoning why he goes down that path. It's not just, well, my wife and daughter are dead, so now I'm going to hate the world and plot revenge. The cool addition, or at least to my knowledge, again, I don't have a vivid memory of the every exact detail of the mini comics and such, but a cool addition is that the person that, or the group that Skeletor in his past was enslaved to was Hordak and the Horde, right?
So yeah, this changes that a little bit. I had never really thought about Skeletor's beginnings, or the fact that he might be from a race of beings that all look like skeletons. I just thought, on Eternia, all of these different characters look different from one another. So I never thought about Skeletor potentially being from somewhere else, or really having that kind of past. It was never something that entered my mind. But we do see here that it looks like his entire race is being enslaved by a race of larger, what look to be like half man, half animal, almost demon-like creatures. And we see that one of their skulls is actually the ram skull on Skeletor's staff that he uses present day. I thought that was a really neat and somewhat dark detail to be included in this comic here. They really thought about all those details about fleshing out where, even the small detail of how he came to use that staff. And spoiler alert, in issue 3, we learn about Evil-Lyn's staff too. So they're doing a really good job filling in all the details.
Right. I agree. I like this formula that they had. The first and last issue are present day heavy, and the two in between are fleshing out characters' paths, which I like that structure of the story. And
yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
Skeletor wanting to sort of rule over Eternia wasn't a thing of, well, like it's just I don't know that one is better than the other, but it's a different dynamic. Again, the reasoning why he wants to attain that power, whereas in the other versions, he kind of feels that it's somewhat of his birthright because he's, in those versions, the brother of King Randor, right? So in those versions, it's more of, well, it's my birthright kind of deal, where here it's not. It's all motivated by his wife and his daughter.
Yeah, he is following Hordak and I guess committing atrocities in the name of Hordak, all under the promise that Hordak will one day grant him the power to resurrect his wife and daughter. So that is Skeletor's driving force, not just a malevolent evil for evil's sake.
Right. And to no one's surprise, Hordak doesn't live up to his end of the bargain. In fact, he makes him choose. I'll give you one back. I'll resurrect either your wife or your daughter. Skeletor chooses his daughter, and then Hordak's like, all right, now we're going to mold her to be one of my soldiers, this and that and the other. So it's never there really is a devil with a deal with the devil, I should say.
Right.
Skeletor makes.
You get what you asked for, but it doesn't go the way that you planned.
Right, exactly. So that's also interesting. But yeah, anything? What else do you want to bring up from the issue?
From this issue, Let me see. Not much. I guess we didn't mention the end of it. It ends with
Right, let's talk about the end.
yeah, it ends with a panel showing Evil-Lyn trying to get the Orlax to reveal its secrets to her.
Now, what do you think about Evil-Lyn not believing Skeletor's story?
That's good. Not I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to mention it, but I didn't. Um, she says, "Tell me honestly, was any of it real?" And Skeletor sighs and says, "What gave me away?" So I guess as readers, we are not even exactly sure what was true and what
Yeah,
was untrue in what Skeletor said. Am I reading that correctly?
that's what I thought. But then at the same time, he's holding what appears to be some sort of amulet or necklace that presumably belonged to his wife. I mean, there's a moment where he's talking to Evil-Lyn, but seeing his wife.
Right. That's true.
So it kind of is like, it kind of leaves the reader with the confusion of, was he telling the truth or was he not? Like, we just don't know by the end. And it's kind of like, remember how the Joker has in the Killing Joke and in The Dark Knight Rises, he has the multiple variations on his origin story.
Yep.
It's the same kind of idea, I think, here. And I kind of dug it because I'm still not sure.
Yeah.
And what did you think of the art in this issue?
Well, I think just as with issue number one, the art is fantastic. Who's the artist's name? Mindy Lee, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she does a really good job here, capturing the style of the cartoon, but of the animated series, but drawing it in her own style. Even I forget the name of the colorist that worked on the book, but the lines, the color, it's all great.
Yeah.
They did a really good job.
Yeah, and probably my favorite page panel of issue 2 would be when the Horde, makes their Hordak and the Horde makes their arrival, and you see the whole bunch of them coming out of the ship. That was pretty epic in scope. So that was my favorite page.
I forgot the character's name, but the one character that has the two heads and like 6 arms and 4 legs. Right. I definitely remember having that action figure, and you could plop all the body parts off and plug them into where the other body parts went. Yeah, I loved that so much as a kid. There's so much here for fans of the original show and original action figures that even some of the characters that only came out in action figure form, and they might only show up in a panel or two and they don't even say anything, but it's just cool to have them there.
Right. Agreed.
Really fleshes out the world.
Absolutely. 100%. All right. So let's rate this issue. Story out of 5 and art out of 5. Where would you land?
I think I have to go with 5s on both of those. I really like Skeletor's backstory. It's like you mentioned at the beginning, it does a very good job of almost making you feel sorry for the guy. Now, does he have to take things to the extreme that he does? Probably not, but at least it adds almost a little bit of humanity to Skeletor. And as we just covered on the art, I can't find a negative thing to say about it. It's great.
Yeah, for me, everything you just said, and I like the fact that they leave you kind of guessing whether Skeletor was telling the truth, and that was his origin and the reasoning for everything he's done. And I like that. So yeah, it's a 5 for story and a 5 for art for me as well. All right, so let's move on to issue 3.
Let's do it, my friend.
All right, give us what happened in this issue.
Well, if the last issue was Skeletor Begins, this is Evil-Lyn Begins. We get a lot of backstory on her and some trauma that she suffered as a child and how that has contributed into who she is today. I mean, that's almost the majority of it. We get the emergence of her magic ball that is part of her staff, and at the end we get her and Skeletor yelling at each other before He-Man and Tila bump in the very last panel. But the vast majority of the book is dealing with Evil-Lyn's childhood, or at least one specific traumatic event in her childhood.
Yeah, that was the whole backstory for Evil-Lyn. Wow, was that disturbing?
It was.
You wouldn't have seen that in the 80s cartoon.
Cannibalistic adoptive parents? No, I don't think you would have seen that in the 80s cartoon.
I was like, holy crap. I mean, and again, you know, the fact that she had to run away and sort of hide away in the sewers to survive, you can't help but feel a little bit sorry for Evil-Lyn.
Well, that's nothing that any child should ever have to go through.
Right. And even part one of the animated series, you know, kind of shows the humanity of Evil-Lyn when she's separated from Skeletor.
True.
Right. So there is, I think there's more goodness in, and not by much, but there's more goodness in her than there is in Skeletor by far.
I would agree with that.
Again, that's providing Skeletor is telling the truth, which the jury's still out there. But, you know,
this is shown to us in direct flashback, so I don't think there's any reason for us to doubt the veracity of what we're being shown here.
Now, did we have from the prior cartoon or the prior toyline, did we have any familiarity with the other mage, witch, sorceress, whatever you want to call her, mystic lady she met in the sewer?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Because she really trains up Evil-Lyn pretty good.
She does, and obviously over a number of years, because when they first meet, Evil-Lyn is a little girl, and by the time they part, Evil-Lyn has grown into a young woman who's obviously older.
Yeah, yeah.
So they had some time together.
Indeed, they did, and she gives Evil-Lyn a warning about how to use how and when to use the magic.
Yes, never in revenge, never for anything bad or evil.
And you know,
only for survival.
Right, and then at the end of the day, one of the things that Evil-Lyn attempts to do is go get revenge on her adopted parents. At which point, this mystic, like her tutor, basically takes away her orb and says, "No, I told you not to do this, right?" And then Evil-Lyn gets cornered in an alley by two men. And then that's when something life-changing happens to her. So what happens there?
Skeletor intervenes we see that the men are closing in on Evil-Lyn, and then from off panel, a green blast zaps in and hits one of the men, and there's a disembodied voice that says, "Give me your hand." When he turned the page, there's a whole page shot of Skeletor saying to Evil-Lyn, "I'm taking you away from all this."
Right, and the cool thing artistic wise is he's got some Hordak, Horde, I should say, trappings.
Yep.
In his design, which is kind of cool. You know what shocked me at these portions is how nice, for his standards, Skeletor was to Evil-Lyn at this point.
He is very nice to her, but he has to be because he's recruiting her, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, I totally get why. It's just weird to see because we never see him like that with her. Like he's always arrogant, overbearing, condescending to her. So to see him in this light, even though he's doing it for a specific reason, was very weird and very different, but it also weirdly enjoyable at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Skeletor really wins her over to his side pretty quickly when they go back to see Majestra, I think is her name.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't place the name.
Yeah, Evil-Lyn uses her magic, and it looks like she almost force chokes Majestra, and kills her, and takes the magic ball that Majestra had taken back from her.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ball that becomes the head of her staff in the present day.
Yeah, no, I like how you see the little trinkets they collect and they gather and they take from their enemies that become such important iconography for the characters, and I like how it's peppered in here along the way. And one of the reasons why I think Evil-Lyn ultimately goes with Skeletor is because he promises her, the way he's talking to her, like he tells her his plan to eventually he's gonna take control of Eternia, but he kind of promises her like sort of like an equal partnership in that endeavor. And then obviously we know that in the future that's not how it turns out. But that promise and that lure of power, I think, is what swayed her to. Because think about it, from her perspective, she's always been, taking orders or living at the behest of what other people want from her, and this and that. So for her, that would be an intriguing prospect. So.
Well, yeah, Skeletor says, "You and I together shall take from Hordak that which is mine." So you're right. He's almost presenting it to her as a partnership. Like, look, you and I together can do great things.
Yeah.
Bad things, but great things nonetheless.
Yeah, great things for them, for their viewpoint, for their definitely not great things overall. I wouldn't recommend taking over, your respective world or anything, but if for them it's considered good things. And I really like the ending in the way He-Man and Tila show up. That felt very vintage 80s kind of cartoon.
Yep.
With the kind of smart ass remark from Tila's point of view, and yeah, no, that page and that moment carried a lot of heavy nostalgia there. So is there anything else from this issue you want to bring up, or?
I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. So what did you think? So remember, 5 for story, 5 for art.
Once again, I'll give it a 5 on both. I really like Evil-Lyn's backstory, like you said, and like with Skeletor in the previous issue, it adds a bit of humanity. You feel for her a little bit, or at least you understand a little bit about why she became the person that she is in the present day. And the artwork doesn't let up. It's still great. It's carried over. I really like, especially in a limited issue miniseries when it's only a specific number of books. It's not open ended. I really like to have the same art team so it keeps that continuity throughout from book to book. So once again, they delivered here, I thought.
Yeah, same here. I give it a 5 on both counts for story and for art. Again, just enough of sympathy for Evil-Lyn, but not reforming my overall opinion of her as a villain. You know what I mean? I still think the way she went about things was wrong.
Of course.
With killing her more so her mentor, like killing her mentor, Majestra. I'm like, that was unnecessary. Like the adoptive parents that one or the if you can even call them that, because they bought her. So,
they were arguing about whether to eat her all at once.
Yeah.
To ration her to eat throughout the winter.
Yeah, so for them, I'm like, good job, go for it. They deserve what they get. So for them, I had no problem with the way she handled it. But for me, where I drew the line was killing Majestra, because there was really no need for that. But they do just enough to get me to feel sympathy without changing my overall outlook on the character. And when you're dealing with a villain, that's what you want. Like it's like same with the Joker. I don't want to start liking the Joker. Like that's not the point, right?
Right.
I can feel sympathy for him, but I don't want to like him. Same with Lex Luthor, right? And Smallville did a great job of that.
Sure did.
I understand why he became the way he became, and I sympathize with the way he grew up. But where he took things and how he went about things, I disagree with. So that's the goal that you want, and I think this comic satisfies that. And the art, again, like you said, it captures the spirit of the show, but puts its own spin on things. And as not gonna lie, as Evil-Lyn got grew up and got older, she got hotter. So there's that, and the cartoon continues that trend. So, but yeah, overall, another near perfect issue. So 5 on both counts. All right, so let's transition to issue 4.
Issue 4. There was a lot going on in this issue.
Yeah, the finale.
The finale. Well, we pick off we pick up right exactly where the last episode ended, with He-Man and Teela in Snake Mountain preparing to do battle with Skeletor and his minions, which that might be my favorite artwork out of the issue. That splash page with He-Man and Teela. Yeah. It just, I like all the surrounding characters that are populating that scene. But basically, they're at Snake Mountain attempting to find a cure for the toxin, which has King Randor unconscious and possibly on the verge of death. But Skeletor and Evil-Lyn are able to put up a force field to separate themselves from He-Man and Teela. They then escape, and the book kind of turns into the Teela show. She spends a lot of the rest of the book demanding some answers from Man-at-Arms, from the Sorceress, from He-Man, and as she is getting really worked up over people keeping secrets from her and not filling her in on everything, her eyes begin to glow, and He-Man says Tila, and Man-at-Arms says that's enough, and she keeps going, and right when she's kind of like reaching the crescendo of being upset, the king begins to awaken. Tila says no, and then yells no, and we see what looks like a spirit almost of Zor? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, the spirit of Zor behind her. She collapses to the ground, and the king has awoken from his, I guess, his coma or whatever he was in.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the reason Tila starts really demanding answers and questioning things, and this will set her up for how we see her in the show, is the moment when Skeletor is kind of, before they disappear, he's kind of throwing a jab at He-Man and saying, "Good luck with Daddy," right?
Yep.
And she picks up on that. She's like, "What did he mean by?" Or I think it was either Skeletor or Evil-Lyn that said it, but she's like, "What did they mean when they said good luck with Daddy?" And and He-Man, to not reveal a secret, has to say, "Well, who's gonna know what those two are thinking?" You know what I mean? So it all stems from that, and then that carries over into her argument with her father about saying, "Well, Prince Adam's never around, and if King Randor dies or is incapacitated to the point where he can't do his job, then we can't find Prince Adam. He can't take over. He-Man's next in line. And what do we know about this guy? He could potentially be our next king, and we don't know where he's from, where he was born, who his family is, any of that stuff. How can we trust him, right?" And then when she pulls off that magic trick, the resurrects King Randor, she's even more confused.
Yeah, and
angry.
But a couple of people who don't seem to be confused by it are Man-at-Arms and the Sorceress.
Yeah.
And instead of dealing with it, they take her along with He-Man to a remote location. Well, no, I guess this is deep inside the castle. And they have that memory extracted from her and given now, and it says this memory belongs to the elders who will keep it safely hidden within the great knowledge of the universe. So when Tila awakens, she doesn't even know what's just happened.
Right. And so, like I said, it really does springboard into part one of the show.
I wish I had read this before watching the show. Like, I wish the release schedule had been switched up. Do you know what I mean?
I agree with you. This should have come out before the show, not after the show dropped.
Because you're right, it leads directly into it.
Like one issue, like the first issue came out the week that the series was going to drop.
Right.
And then the rest of it came out after. So, but imagine having read this first. Then when Tila is easily upset, you understand that. Because a lot of the complaints is, well, Tila's, why is she acting that way? Blah, 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 and all there was a bunch of man babies that took issue with that. But if you read this book, read this whole story, it's pretty obvious why she's upset, and it's justifiable. You know what I mean? So I'm in agreement with you. This should have released just before the series. This whole series should have released before the series dropped.
But I'm glad we have it. Better late than never.
Absolutely, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, I'm going to watch all 10 in relative succession, all 10 episodes. So having this knowledge now will change the experience. when I do that full rewatch. Um, um, and then the ending seemingly ends with Skeletor and Evil-Lyn getting some answers about the coming end of the world, because the shocked look on their face pretty much tells you they're about to get the answers they're seeking.
Yep.
So yeah, is there anything else you want to mention?
I don't think so.
All right. So then, with that being said, let's rate it. 5 for writing, 5 for story. Where were you at with this one?
A 5 on both again. I thought this was a satisfying conclusion to the 4-issue series. The artwork was tremendous, as it has been since book 1. I can't say enough good things about it. I was not familiar with Mindy Lee's work before this series, but I think I'll probably be looking out for it now to see what she does next. I really liked it. And Kevin Smith and his 2 other co-writers have given us a very worthy, and when I say worthy, I mean it. In my opinion, Masters of the Universe is one of the highlight properties of my childhood. It was up there with just the best there was. So I'm really happy that Kevin Smith and his team have taken really good care to treat the material with respect and love, and I'm all about it. So 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I think it's a 5 on both ends for writing and story. And I think if we go back to issue 1, I'm pretty sure our overall grade for this thing, because I think we gave issue 1 a 4.5 out of 5 for writing, at least. But I think our overall grade is about 9.5 out of 10 for the whole 4-issue series, or thereabouts. That's where it would average out.
That sounds about right.
So, but yeah, I thought that, like I said, because of the whole, you actually see a battle it's been building up to a battle between He-Man and Tila against Skeletor and Evil-Lyn and all the forces, and we kind of get the payoff here, and so for that reason, this is my favorite issue of the bunch, even though I've liked them all, right? And art-wise, I mean, Mindy Lee's done a great job throughout, but this is also my favorite because we get those, group battles, and like you talked about the splash page. I'm in agreement with you. That fight is my favorite piece of the issue of the series. So what a fantastic prequel series. I loved it, and when I do my full 10-episode rewatch, I'm probably going to read the first 4 issues again, and then go straight into my rewatch of the whole show and see how that alters the experience. Doing them in a relatively complete sitting, and see how that affects things. But yeah, I love this, and I don't know about you, Chris, but I really hope that Dark Horse plans on doing more Masters of the Universe comics. Even if they're not necessarily connected to the show, but just more Masters comics, I think it's a must.
Sure, I loved the Masters of the Universe comics when they were with DC, and I will follow them over to Dark Horse if Dark Horse wants to do their own thing as well. I don't know if Kevin Smith would be able to be involved with something that wasn't like connected to the show, like if they had an ongoing series, a new ongoing series. But if they're going to do more of the show, I'll take more of the comic that ties into that. If they want to do a separate universe, sure, let me have it.
Yeah, like Chris, I'm of the belief that I have a feeling we're going to get more of this show.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody goes into it and says, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a one and done." You know what I mean? So I think there's going to be more of this show, which would necessitate more of these comics in this continuity. But like you were saying, if they want to do something outside of the show's continuity, then I'm for that. I'm for whatever they decide. I just want more Masters of the Universe comics. And now that Dark Horse once again has the license, they'd be silly to sit on it and do nothing with it. Because like you were saying, the lore, the mythology of this franchise, this IP. And I'm not saying reinvent the wheel and, Nolanize it, pull a Chris Nolan or anything like that. I'm just saying, when you treat it with this level of respect, and weight, I think the sky is the limit for this franchise. And I want to see that continue in comics as well as on screen. So I'm wishing and hopeful for more comics. That's where I am right now. But and of course, if there are new comics, we'll cover them for you, and Chris and I will review them. But while we're waiting for potential new comics from Dark Horse, we do plan, you and I, to go back and do the DC run of the books. So we are going to have He-Man comic content while we're waiting for potential Dark Horse stuff. So that will happen on this very show. But I think that brings this episode to a close, Chris.
I think you're right, my friend. Pretty much wraps it up.
Before we wrap up, as we always do, give our social media plugs. So if people want to continue talking He-Man and the Masters of the Universe with you, where do they do that?
Well, on Twitter, I am at Chris N. Harrelson, or you can search for Commodore Schmidlap. That is my screen name on there or whatever. Yeah. And we'll post about this in the Facebook group, and I'll be happy to chat about it there.
And for me, it's at Adam_Leesfan on Twitter. We have the Twitter page for the podcast network, which is at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook group, which should be in the description below. Click the link. I will add you. And we can continue the conversation there. I know that as of this recording, by the time you hear it, it'll be over. But still, as of this recording, it is Thanksgiving week for you, Chris, and for our American listeners. So from me to you and to all our listeners, have a happy Thanksgiving, sir. And because mine passed already, I urge you to have an extra piece of turkey and an extra piece of pie on my behalf.
Will do, sir.
So yeah, wish you guys all a happy and healthy and safe Thanksgiving. Enjoy. And we will be back soon with more Masters of the Universe coverage. But until then, remember that Masters of the Universe Revelation, the prequel comic, is forever, from the first issue to the last. So long, everybody, and good journey.
Good journey.
By the power of Grayskull!